Well, let's get started here with the yokai iceberg, going from the most well-known and normal ones to the strangest, most bizarre, and quite unknown. Well, let's start by explaining what yokai are, right? You've probably already seen them in various games, manga, and anime out there. Well, yokai in Japan would be, to put it simply, creatures, monsters, demons, and ghosts in general. And just like everything related to legends and even ancient gods, yokai were used to explain phenomena that people didn't understand, right? Whether it's a noise in the house at night, a sudden storm, or a bad situation that happened out of nowhere, and so on and so on and so on. And yokai are present in many places: mountains, fields, temples, dark streets, inside the house, in a cup. Yeah, seriously, in a cup. And anything else you can think of. And even though most yokai are really strange and pretty ugly, they're not necessarily evil. Many times, they're more like spirits that have been forgotten or are lost. And if you make an offering, like a prayer, you can help them. And they can even end up becoming protectors. Yokai have been present in Japan's history for a very long time. They're even in very old books that talk about gods and so on. Even the story of Izanagi, right? Who is the god that's part of the couple who created the world. When Izanami, his wife, died, he went down to the underworld and ended up getting scared by her. And there are even writings that say he was chased by evil witches, right? Who symbolize the fear of things, very similar to yokai. And there's the night parade of demons, which is when several yokai gather and start a procession, right? Which is a legend very similar to the procession of souls here in the West. These will actually be the first yokai I discuss here. The Yaki Yagyo, which would be, translating it, right, the parade of 100 demons, or the procession of 100 demons, isn't exactly a yokai, as in a creature, right? It's more of an event, which is actually very chaotic and very scary. That's when various yokai of all possible kinds, from koni to the tisu komagami, which would be, for example, objects that came to life, right? Like a cup, a spoon, a slipper, and so on. These monsters gather in deserted streets and start walking, throwing parties, and making a ruckus, singing songs, and so on. It's also much like the fairy folk procession in Celtic mythology, where similar things happen. And according to what they say, right, this procession of yokai makes the whole area's atmosphere really heavy. Everyone starts to feel that something strange is happening. And if you're unlucky enough to be out on the street at that moment and look directly at the procession, you could die in an extremely violent way or simply disappear. To get rid of this danger, in the past, people would go to the famous court astrologers, who would try to calculate and guess the nights most likely for this procession to happen. And then, when the sun set, people would go inside their houses, lock the doors and windows, cover the windows as well, put amulets all around the house, and start praying all night long, making sure not to look through any cracks in the windows or doors. Well, even so, if someone was caught, the only way to get out of it would be to lie face down on the ground, close your eyes tightly, start praying, and wait for the sun to rise. Only then would the procession, the parade of the 6 demons, come to an end. Well, the next creature I want to talk about here, the next yokai, is quite famous, mostly because of Naruto, and that's the Kitsune, a famous fox from Japanese and Chinese folklore. Kitsune can be trickster creatures, meaning they are deceivers, those who play pranks, and they can also be very intelligent and wise. Their main ability is shape-shifting, especially into very beautiful women, but they can also turn into wise old men or any kind of being to interact with humans. And even though they are tricksters and like to deceive humans, they can also become very loyal wives to men. But usually, according to the legends, when the man finds out that his wife is a kitsune, he ends up leaving and the creature is left completely sad. The power of a kitsune is measured by how many tails she has, with the maximum being the famous 9-tailed fox. The tails grow as the kitsune becomes wiser and also older. They say a new tail would appear every 100 years. When they reach the max level, they turned white or gold. These foxes would also have a kind of magical fire called foxfire. Another legend about foxes says that white kitsune, or white foxes, would actually be loyal servants and messengers, loyal to the god or goddess Inari, who would be the fox goddess. And foxes gained this importance in Japan because in the past, foxes would end up killing the rats that stayed near the crops. Because of that, even today we have fox statues in front of temples, and some even leave some tofu there for the foxes, which would be their favorite food. And now, alongside the Kitsune in popularity, we have the Tengu, who also appear in Naruto as the form of Sasuke's Susanoo. Well, the Tengu are yokai that can be seen as monsters or sometimes even as gods. In the past, they used to have more of a giant bird form, a bird of prey that hunted humans. But nowadays, they've taken on human forms with wings, red faces, and big noses. They are divided into two groups. The Daitengu, who have more human-like forms and a clear consciousness, and the Kotengu, who aren't as intelligent and have the form of crows. In older stories, according to Buddhism, the Tengu were monsters that hated Buddhism. And because of that, they attacked people, caused wars, and made those who encountered them, even by accident, lose their sanity. They say these Tengu were also emperors and leaders who became very proud and vain, and because of that, ended up in the Tengu realm. There's even an expression in Japan that connects Tengu to the proud, saying that those who are very vain and have a lot of pride become Tengu. But nowadays, Tengu have become less like villains and more like guardians, especially of sacred places and also mountains. And even many times, they are depicted wearing mountain monks' robes. And they're also holding a feather fan, which, according to legends, has the power to create a devastating windstorm and also has magical powers to make a person's nose grow or shrink. And now let's talk about the Onis, which are also a type of yokai and can be called ogres or Japanese demons, which probably nowadays the most famous work that features Onis, right? Wow, my mouth is shining. Well, but going back, the most famous work nowadays that features Onis is probably Demon Slayer, right? But they've also appeared, for example, in Dragon Ball. And the Onis really look a lot like ogres. They carry a club called kanabo. They wear a tiger skin loincloth. They are giant and monstrous beings with wild flame-colored hair, either blue or red. And there's also a Japanese expression that uses them that goes like this, right? To give a club to an Oni. Basically, it means giving a lot of power to someone who is already very dangerous. Well, usually an Oni is born when a very evil person dies. And there in hell, they become this monster to serve the god of the underworld and torture souls, etc. But they also say that if someone is extremely evil while still alive, that person can end up becoming an Oni here and cause some trouble here on Earth. And even though they appear as villains in most stories, they also end up becoming symbols to ward off ghosts and bad luck. Japan even has a festival called Setsu Subun. Wait, let me check if that's the correct name. That's right, where people throw beans outside their houses saying Onis out and luck in. And then the parents also dress up as Oni, while their children throw beans at them, having a lot of fun. Well, starting here with the second layer, I wanted to tell you about a yokai called Turbo-chan, or, according to Dantatan, Grandma Turbo. It might even seem a bit bizarre, but this legend exists. It's actually a pretty modern legend from Japan, right? According to what they say, Grandma Turbo would be an old lady, or a being that looks like an old lady, who haunts highways and tunnels. And the weirdest thing about this legend is that this old lady usually haunts the cars that pass through the area where she is in a very bizarre way. So she simply starts running after the car. Sometimes she runs normally, just like a person. I mean, looking like a regular person, but reaching incredible speeds and even overtaking cars. Or sometimes, in an even weirder way, she runs on all fours after the car. Well, here's what happens. A person is passing through the area, then they look in the car's rearview mirror and start seeing an old lady running there. In theory, she doesn't do any harm to the person. She just keeps running behind the car. But they say right, that people end up getting so scared of her that they lose control of the car. And then a tragedy happens, right? No one knows exactly how the spirit of Grandma Turbo came to be, but according to the legends, it would be the spirit of an old lady who ended up being run over by a car in that area. And she came back to take revenge on cars and drivers. Well, continuing here, let's move on to another very famous creature from Japan, which is the Kappa. If you translate its name, it would be something like Child of the River. And the Kappa is a yokai that has a very strange appearance. It has the height of a child and scaly skin that resembles a reptile. It has a turtle shell on its back and webbing on its hands. But the main thing is that its head is flat like a plate and it's filled with water. And according to the legends, if this water dries up, the powers of the Kappa are gone. There's something really weird about the Kappa legend, which is this. According to what they say, right? It's also a trickster being. It likes to play tricks on children and pregnant old women, but they can also be very dangerous. They can drag people and animals underwater and drown them, but they like it, mainly to go after a magical or mythical sphere, which is the Shirikuku-dama. According to legends, this sphere is inside people's anus. And, right, the Kappa wants to take this sphere from people. And there's a way, right, for you to defend yourself from the Kappa if you ever meet him. And you don't want to lose your mythical sphere to him. So what do? You bow like this. Look, a Japanese-style bow, you know. And then the Kappa, out of etiquette, will do the same. And then the water from the top of his head will spill. He'll lose his powers. And then you can escape. Well, despite all that, the Kappa also has many qualities. They know a lot about medicinal arts. In fact, it's said that they were the ones who taught humans how to heal our injuries. They also love to wrestle sumo and eat cucumber. And, according to what they say, right, for you to cross the waters without being attacked by a Kappa, you just have to throw cucumbers with the names of ancestral gods written on them into the water. And then the Kappas will leave you alone. And this connection between cucumber and Kappa is so strong that even today in Japan, sushi, the sushi, you know, that food filled with cucumber is called Kappa maki. Well, now talking here about Kuchisake Onna, who is also another very famous yokai even today. She would be the woman with the slit mouth. She is a yokai who walks through deserted streets looking for her victim. And when this victim sees her from afar, she looks like an ordinary and very beautiful woman, right? She has this part of her face covered, right? Her mouth is covered. Then she approaches the victim and asks if she is a beautiful woman, usually, right? The victim will say yes. And then, when she reveals it, her mouth will look monstrous, right? It's all cut up. And she will still ask even then? Usually the person will say no, or they'll run away. And then the person will be attacked by Kuchisake Onna right there. If the person answers yes, she will cut the person's mouth to look like hers. The most common way to get rid of her at that moment would be to give her a confusing answer. Say, yeah, you're average, right? Kind of, you know. She'll get really confused and you run away. And if you don't want to have a visit from yokai at your house, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and all that stuff you already know. But consider becoming a member here. Less than 8 Ries won't hurt me. You'll really help me keep working on the channel. You'll also get early access to new videos, plus exclusive videos. Plus, your name will be shown in the video like these appearing now. I have the idea that you can help me buy the products that are showing up here on the screen. Just click there. There will be PlayStation 5 books and everything else. Or you can access the link that's in the pinned comment. All right? Well, now let's move on to a really disgusting yokai. It's Akanami. He looks like an insect, like a cockroach, but a yokai. Well, usually when they show up, they're really short, and they look like a child or a very short person, but they can look even shorter because they walk hunched over, kind of like me recording this video here. Well, Akanamas can have different colors. They can look moldy green or a lighter green. Their hair is extremely oily, and so is their skin. And they're always naked. They can have either 5 fingers on their hands and feet, and they have an extremely long tongue which they use to feed, and their food is in the bathroom. It can be public or inside a house, and these bathrooms have to be dirty for them to feed. If you know what I mean? Well, with that tongue, they lick the sludge, the hair, and all the dirt that's in the bathroom. But they're actually very shy. They're basically cockroaches, really, like I told you, because if they see a human or a light is shined on them, they run away and disappear from the place. Now let's talk about Shorogumo, or Shorogumo, which would be a kind of mermaid spider from Japanese mythology. That's because she's a spider that can transform into a very beautiful woman to seduce men and so on. According to the legend, when a specific spider, I forgot its name now, I think it's Nephyla, something like that. Anyway, when this spider manages to reach 400 years old, it gains a special ability to transform into a human. In this case, a woman. And using this gift, she goes out and talks to someone. When she realizes that this person is easily influenced, she takes them to her home, which would be a cave, a darker place, and starts playing a Japanese instrument called biwa to distract her victim. When the victim is completely distracted, she manages to tie up the victim, right? Tie them up, trap them in a specific web, and then injects venom into them to paralyze the victim. Then she starts devouring them slowly, day after day. Despite that, if you are very clever, you can escape from a Yorogumo, because according to a story, there was a lumberjack who was resting near a river when he noticed that it seemed like there was a spider trying to put a web on his foot, right there near the water. So he got up, put that web on a tree, and suddenly it was pulled brutally into the water. That was the Yorogumo's plan, to drag the lumberjack into the water. And now Tek. And maybe it's one of the scariest creatures in Japan. Well, Tek would be a vengeful spirit. In Japan, these creatures are called unryo, or something like that. And this specific vengeful ghost is the ghost of a student. She was killed on the train tracks and her body was cut in half. Since then, she started wandering through schools and stations, seeking revenge. She has that name because, since she doesn't have the lower part of her body, she moves like this, with her elbows and hands. And this movement makes a Tek sound. That's where the name comes from. And even though it seems like she can't move very fast, she can jump and run much faster than a human, very easily. So, my friend, if you're unlucky enough to run into one and you're on foot, she'll probably catch you. And when she catches you, she'll use a scythe or a chainsaw. Now, where she got the scythe and the chainsaw from, I don't know. But somehow, she'll manage to cut you right in half to make you look just like her. And she does this simply because either she's jealous or she wants people to feel exactly what she's feeling. Well, starting here, the fourth layer, let's talk. Look, we're going to talk here about Gashadokuro, which might be the most impressive yokai on this list. Well, that's because it's a gigantic being made entirely of human bones. And for the Gashadokuro to appear, there would have to be several dead people in the same place who died either from hunger or were left behind after being killed there without a proper burial. Then the hatred and resentment of these people would cause the bones to come together into a skeleton. It is 15 times the size of a normal human, and even though it's extremely gigantic and made of bones, it doesn't make any noise when it approaches its victims. And its victims, of course, are humans, because it wants to take revenge on people and satisfy its hunger. The only thing a person notices when Gashadokuro is coming after them is a kind of rattling sound in their ears. And if they don't notice it quickly and get out of there, Gashadokuro will catch them, rip off their head, and drink their blood. And since it's so big, there's not much you can do against it. You can't really fight it, right? There's no way for you to break apart Gashadokuro's bones by normal means. The only way to get rid of it would be to hide very well until morning, because only the sun could break the spell on those bones. And the next one here isn't a bad yokai. In fact, it's a very kind one, which is a mabi. A mabi is kind of a creature that looks like a mermaid, but not exactly. That's because she has a bird's beak and also has 3 legs or 3 fins. Well, a mabi would be a prophetic creature. In other words, she can see people's futures. According to a story from 1846, a government official went to check out a light that always shone in the sea at night. When he got there, a mabi appeared to him and made a double prediction. First, she said that Japan would have 6 years of abundant harvest, but there would also be an epidemic of diseases. And when these diseases started, people should draw her image and show it to others, because she would appear and protect them. Because of this, even during the last problem we had with a global disease, you know what I'm talking about, people started flooding social media with images of a mabi so they would be protected. Now let's talk about Shui Shirimi, a yokai who doesn't want to kill anyone. He just wants to scare people and have fun with it. He has a very strange way of doing this. According to legend, one time a samurai was walking through Kyoto late at night, and a cloaked man blocked his path, but before the samurai could do anything, this man turned around, bent over, and took off his cloak. Where his rear should have been, there was a giant eye. The samurai got scared, screamed, and ran for his life. And that's Shirimi, whose name translates to eye on the butt. Well, opening up the 5th layer here, we have Jinminken, which is another creature that's not exactly evil, but it's strange. Really weird. Jinminken is basically a Japanese street dog, like the mutts we have here in Brazil, but it's very small and is always rummaging through the trash and so on. But when you get really close to it and it looks at you, it doesn't have a dog's face. It has the face of an old, middle-aged man, which is extremely bizarre. It also runs extremely fast because they say that besides rummaging through the trash, it can run along highways next to cars. Much like Turbo Granny, of course, this scares drivers. And if you try to talk to this creature, it will just tell you to leave it alone, stop staring, and go away. Many say that Jin Minkin. Some say it would be the result of government genetic experiments, secret experiments. Others say that actually it would be the soul of people who worked too much during their lives, ended up dying from stress, and were reincarnated as dogs. Urubio Toshi is a little bit like the Corpo Seco we have here in Brazil. Just a little, okay? Because the way it hunts its victims is not that similar. Well, Urubio Toshi is a grotesque, strange, and violent creature that stays at the top of trees, hidden among the leaves. As soon as it sees someone passing underneath right below it, it drops down. That's because it's a giant head. Some say it's a giant human head with sharp teeth. Others say it has the head of an oni or even a monkey's head. Either way, it drops and lands right on top of the person, crushing them. Then it starts devouring their flesh. After finishing its meal, it takes the person's bones and climbs back up to the top of the tree. When it's not hunting someone, it likes to annoy people by throwing things at their heads and letting out a bizarre laugh to scare them. Sometimes, instead of dropping on someone, it just drops a rock on them. For those walking the streets of Japan, if you hear a noise in the trees, you should stay alert. And Nupepo is a creature that... No Nupepo. It's not violent or anything, but it's still bizarre and scary. That's because of its shape. It's about the size of a child. But it doesn't have defined arms or a clearly defined face. It's more like a mass of flesh. Extremely stinky. It tends to inhabit places like temples, deserted streets, and cemeteries. It doesn't attack anyone, right? Like I told you, it doesn't attack anyone. It's very peaceful, but it's usually very shy. But it's really shy. And if you see it, it'll run away, and it's really fast. It's pretty hard to catch it. According to legend, once upon a time, there in the palace of Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu, Lupepo appeared. But no one knew exactly what this creature was. But the shogun found out that it seemed there was a being that was scaring off the guards because of its stench. And he asked for this person, this creature that was bothering them, to be expelled without hurting it. Well, it turns out that sometime later they discovered through medicinal books that the flesh of the Lupepo, which was the creature that had visited them, gave incredible power of healing and eternal youth. This made the shogun regret having expelled that piece of meat that was bothering his guards. Well, Kurobuzo would be a very strange and macabre yokai from Japanese folklore. In appearance, at least, he even resembles Slender Man a bit. That's because he's a very tall, dark, and thin creature. He can also stretch his limbs. And Kurobuzo has a very strange habit, which is to enter other people's houses at night and approach victims who are sleeping, mainly women, and start licking them with his slimy tongue. Their eyes, mouth, face, everything. And when he does this, he sucks the person's life energy. The person doesn't die right away, but the next day, they wake up feeling sick and ill. One way to avoid this strange visit at night is to put amulets on your doors, or place a small light near your bed since he hates brightness. Also, if you wake up during the night and try to catch him, you won't be able to because he's extremely fast. So it's good to do these things to avoid a visit from our dear licker. And then there's Beto-san, who has a very sad story. Actually, he's not a violent yokai either, but he's quite scary because of the way he acts. He walks through deserted streets at night, waiting for someone to pass by. When someone does, he sticks to their back and starts walking behind them. And you won't see him, okay? You'll only hear the little sound he makes, which is Beto, the sound of his wooden sandals. It's really bizarre and scary because you'll feel a heavy energy behind you, and also as if someone is breathing near you. But he doesn't do this to scare anyone or anything like that. He just feels very lonely and wants to walk with someone. But there's a way to get rid of him if you don't feel comfortable having a spirit behind you. You should go to your lips and say Beto-san. You can let Beto-san pass after you, and then he'll walk by and leave. Now to finish this layer, let's talk about Osubaba. She is a completely grotesque and bizarre figure from Japanese folklore. She would be a yokai who haunts dark forests, rural areas, and sometimes even other places. Urban, deserted areas, too, they say. She has an extremely uncomfortable appearance to look at. That's because she's an old woman, tall, thin, with extremely long and thin limbs. Just seeing her from a distance is enough to paralyze you with the horror of what you're seeing. Everyone says her way of acting, so to speak, is predatory and extremely violent. She stays up in the trees, waiting for someone to pass by. When someone does, she comes down and starts chasing the person. And despite her limbs being strange, she is very fast and can easily catch her prey. Then she sinks her claws into the person and uses her strength to devour her victim. She can also cause psychological terror in people. That's because she can imitate voices, even the voices of people who have already passed away, just to lure her victims. The only way to avoid her is if you see something strange in a tree, in front of you, or in an area ahead of you. You should change your path. And starting here with the 7th layer, let's talk about Dedara Daidaraboti, which is a really cool legend from Japan, and even a creator if you think about it, as you'll see here. That's because Dedara Daidaraboti would be a giant, a real giant, extremely huge, so big that you could see him even if he's behind a mountain, because he is bigger than the mountains. Dedara Daidaraboti would be a peaceful being, but there's a catch, right? As he walks, he sinks the ground because he's so heavy. And according to what they say in Japan, the country's morphology was caused by Dedara Daidaraboti as he walked. They even say that the most famous water sources in Japan were created by him when he stepped on the ground with his wet foot. And they even say that once he wanted to compare the weight of the Tsukuba and Fuji mountains. He tied the two mountains together with a cosmic rope and started to weigh them. But then the rope snapped, and because of that, Mount Tsukuba fell and split in two, creating the image we have of it today. And because of this role as a creator, he is still highly respected there to this day. Now, going back to the most bizarre yokai, we have Nuri Toboki, which also has an extremely disgusting appearance. That's because it appears as a reanimated corpse with completely dark skin and even a fishtail coming out of its back. But its main and most bizarre characteristic is that its eyes are bulging out. They're loose, just hanging there. It's very strange. Well, this creature is connected to the Butsu Mutsudan, which is a Buddhist altar that some Japanese families have to pray for their ancestors. And it usually appears when the family is neglecting the altar, has forgotten about it, or is not honoring their ancestors properly. Then this creature shows up. It appears, and when it comes out of the altar at night, it starts banging on things around the house. It starts imitating the voice of Buddha as if it were him to confuse the residents. It begins making false prophecies and all sorts of things just to scare people. The way to get rid of it is by cleaning and taking care of the Butsu Mutsudan in your house, the Shirai Yashiki. It would be the foot washing mansion. It's one of the strangest yokai that there is. And actually for me, maybe it's the strangest one of the ones I know. It's Turpiones. But this one is simply a foot, but it's not just any foot. It's a foot that appears out of nowhere in your house. It's gigantic, smelly, hairy, and dirty. And he tells you to wash his foot. That's what this yokai does. Okay? According to the legend, there was a samurai named Hajime Hatamoto. He was at his mansion just relaxing when suddenly during the night, he was awakened by the sound of the roof breaking. When he went to check, it was just this foot there, hanging and dirty and telling him to wash its foot. So he was scared, right? He went there and cleaned it. But there was a problem. Every night that cursed foot would show up there. And when the samurai tried to ignore it and send it away, to hell with the house, he would just get angry. He started stomping his foot on the floor, and that started breaking the furniture and everything. So not being able to take it anymore, Ajima moved out. That's it. Besides that, another guy ended up buying the place and tried to ignore the yokai, but that made him destroy the mansion. If you watched the video up to here and enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, like, and share. And I'll see you next time.